Building Australia's economic future must have a very strong Northern Australia as well. And within that, the strongest possible Northern Territory. And today I'm announcing Australia's new Northern Plan for the future of Northern Australia. We're going to base this on three pillars. Pillar number one, we intend to establish a Northern Special Economic Zone focused on the Territory. This will include introducing tax incentives with the object of reducing the corporate tax for Northern Territory-based companies within 5 years. Simplifying investment rules to make it easier for projects to be landed here in the Territory. And three, streamlining regulation and assessment of major projects so projects can get going as soon as possible. There are constitutional reasons why we begin this Northern Special Economic Zone here in the Northern Territory, and that is, under our Constitution, there is a dispute about whether you can have different tax rates between the states. Not so for the Territory, and that's why we intend to begin here. My personal objective for the Territory, given its unique remoteness, is that it would be great to have a company tax rate here about 1/3 lower than that of the rest of the country for NT-based businesses. We of course would consult with the Northern Territory Government and with the business community, and if returned, we would then finalise and announce a detailed implementation plan in 2014. And my objective would be to get it agreed with all the local partners so that we have a new rate in hand for new businesses planning their future investment decisions to kick in by 2018. Pillar number two is the expansion of the Ord irrigation scheme into stage 3. This is designed to open up 14,000 hectares in the Knox Plains and Keep River areas of the Territory, and we would do this in partnership with the Northern Territory Government, who need some additional $10 million in support to deal with native title negotiations in order to secure the land for this purpose in the future. And this would unleash an enormous amount of agricultural land for the future. And the economists tell us $150 million worth of agricultural production from sugar-based crops and elsewhere. This is about investing in a huge new project for Australia, the future of agribusiness, and on top of that, you're looking at the expansion of the Ord irrigation area by 1/3 over its current size. Number three, pillar number three, 20-year growth plans, strategic growth plans for both Darwin and Northern Queensland. Infrastructure Australia would do this work in partnership with the Queensland and Northern Territory governments and local councils to deliver the infrastructure which Northern Australia and these centres needs in the future. It's based in part on the successful 50-year supply chain model developed for the Mount Isa to Townsville Economic Development Zone. The Darwin Plan will focus on LNG and mining development, agribusiness, engineering and other services, and capitalising, of course, on the national broadband network. For Townsville, the plan would focus on transport networks and port proximity to resource and agricultural developments, education, defence and proximity to tropical markets. Defence, of course, is also key here in the Territory and in Darwin. In Cairns, we'll focus on tourism, in particular, large new arrivals of Chinese tourists that I referred to only yesterday in Cairns, related hospitality services, industries, agribusiness, defence again, and engineering and medical services. And in Mackay, we'll focus on opportunities presented by its proximity to the Bowen and fantastic Galilee basins and the great future mining potential they hold, the mining services industries, sugar and milling, transport and logistics networks, and the national broadband network opportunities for the future. We'll have more to say about more elements of our Northern Economic Plan for the future. But let me put it in pretty simple terms. What we need is the national imagination to harness the enormous agricultural potential of Northern Australia to build the new food export industries to turbocharge our economy in the future. We will harness the bountiful supply of water available here in the north to drive the production of these new food industries for export and create new jobs. And through this special economic zone, we will also create the tax and other incentives necessary to build the new industries for Northern Australia for the future. Our logic is simple. We need a national imagination to grasp the economic potential that Northern Australia holds, not just for itself, but our entire vast continent. And beyond that imagination, having core concrete plans to make it work. Here, a special economic zone. In the Ord, expanding the area by a third. In Northern Queensland, strategic growth plans for the next 20 years. And more to be said on those things later. We're in the business of building the country up. Unfortunately, our opponents seem to be more focused on cuts, and cuts to the bone. Let's take a look at what would happen here locally in the electorate of Solomon. We're in the business of building up Darwin's economic development and jobs. Yet, what we have seen from the other side is a decision to cut the national broadband network's rollout here in Darwin, which would turbocharge our businesses for the future. We build the national broadband network for Darwin. Our opponents would simply cut the network down. We are building the local schools here in the Northern Territory, but because the Liberal National Party government here and the scepticism of Mr Abbott's government, we would see instead a cut of some $375 million, which would otherwise go to our schools here in the Northern Territory under the Better Schools Plan. And on top of that, a cut Mr Abbott would deliver to the thousands of Territory families who are currently receiving the School Kids Bonus. Up here in the Territory, we have invested and are investing some $2.02 billion in the health and hospital infrastructure of Darwin and the Territory from when the government was elected out to 2017. This is a huge investment. We've seen it at Royal Darwin, we've seen it elsewhere as well. And part of that investment has been Medicare Local Services delivering frontline services with 60 staff out there doing the work face-to-face with patients in the community. And what's Mr Abbott's plan? To cut Medicare locals across the country and to cut them here as well. And as I said, we're on the business of building the jobs of the future. Mr Abbott has said he's going to cut 12,000 jobs in the future, public service. I just remind folks that up here in Darwin there are about 7,000 public servants. And if you want to look for a little case study here under the Territory government, I understand we've already seen 130 teachers sacked. We've seen something like 171 child protection workers' jobs disappear. We've seen also the scrapping of the children's wing or ward at the Royal Darwin Hospital. And of course, we have seen a 30% cut in the Territory government's budget to Charles Darwin University. So when I talk nationally about our government being committed to building Northern Australia up, building the entire nation up, and when I talk about Mr Abbott's plan to cut to the bone, it's not just the national figures. You drill it down to each community across Australia, and they all tell this story.